Welcome to another edition of AFL Today, Week 3 in review. I'm your host, E-Money, joined today by legendary AFL analyst Tony Cozzolino. Tony, another week. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Great to be back, and an interesting week it was. I think we're really seeing a change here, especially offensively within the league.
Absolutely. Now let me tell you, speaking about changes, it looks like the run game has resurfaced here in the AFL, or found its home now. We'll call it the new AFL with the new substitution rules. Let's look at some of these teams. Nashville Cats, Dallas Desperados, Orlando Predators, Tampa Bay Storm, all with a big run game this week, and most of those teams coming out victorious. But I think the biggest surprise this week is you'll find two of the AFL's most storied franchise, Tampa Bay Storm and the Arizona Rattlers, a combined 0-6. Now we know that Arizona is typically a slow starter, but Tony, let me ask you this. 0-3 for Tampa Bay, missing the playoffs last year. Is it time to panic, and is Markham's era done?
Yeah, and Tampa Bay 0-3. They're coming home for a game against New York, who's also 0-2. That's going to be a huge game for them. Also, the Arizona Rattlers 0-3. They've got a home game against Las Vegas. So I think both these teams need to win these next games. But I will tell you, in the AFL, a lot of teams make the playoffs, as we saw last year. Chicago got in with a losing record. Not only got in, but won the whole thing. So both these teams still have a chance to get things together. But Tampa Bay particularly is playing New York, who's also 0-2. And one of those two teams is going to go in to the second month of the season without a win, and that's not a good thing.
Absolutely, Tony. 0-4 is definitely where you don't want to be. All right, let's get into it, folks. Week number 3 in review. Philadelphia Soul takes a trip to Grand Rapids. And again, 69-40, Philly pulls it off. And Tony Graziani has yet to play a complete game. Takes himself out in the fourth quarter. Not with injury. Again, they're just dominating so much. Grand Rapids, on the other side, has the ultimate Russian roulette going for quarterback. Matt Salk gone. Michael Bishop in. Tony, what's going on in Grand Rapids?
Yeah, can you believe all it took were 2 interceptions in that game to get Matt Salk released? And looks like they really wanted to get Michael Bishop involved and start playing, but I don't know if it's going to be a good move. I really thought Matt Salk showed some promising things in those 2 games, and this could come back to bite them. Michael Bishop has not proved that he can be a real leader yet, so he's getting another whirl at it. But Grand Rapids, team that's usually in disarray, could be right back there in it. I think another big thing in this game, they were 5 for 11 in third downs, and anytime you're under 50% in a game in third down conversions, it's not going to happen. Philadelphia, on the other hand, looking like they've got things working in the right direction for their big showdown against Colorado this Thursday night.
Absolutely, Tony. And I'll tell you, Matt Salk played fantastic for Grand Rapids last year, I think. And who knows where he's going to end up, but somebody's going to get a great pickup at quarterback. All right, moving on. Let's talk Austin Wranglers. Take a trip to the jungle. And Adrian McPherson did not have quite the game he was looking for. Had his worst outing yet to date. 3 interceptions as Orlando goes down 30-45. The Preds, once again, we talked about at the top of the show, their running game proved to be the difference here, I think. Not a lot of yardage, but I think definitely putting that mentality in there as they carried the ball 18 times. T-Cos, do you see a trend here as the run game makes its way to the AFL for Orlando?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were wondering what the free substitution rule was really going to do to the game. A lot of people thought, well, the scoring's going to go down because the defense is going to be better. Well, that hasn't really happened. Actually, the scoring has improved because I think now in the red zone, you have a much better opportunity to get the ball in there because you can bring in a jumbo package and then you can pound it in with the rush, which we saw in many of these games. But Orlando, I think it was a big win for them after the disappointing home loss to L.A., and now they've got to get ready to play Dallas at home. So this will be a real test, and I think they've probably got a little revenge on their mind as well for what happened last year when Dallas really put it to them at home.
Absolutely, T-Cos. And as Gruden said last week in that disappointing loss to the Avengers, that the Preds do not lose at home, and they got a game to make up, and going to Dallas is going to be a true test. Speaking of Dallas, they take a trip to the KC Brigade, and typical Dallas Clint Dozell style, they come out with a huge win. Dallas 66, KC 54, 5 rushing touchdowns again for Joshua, as we talked about, 7 TDs that Dozell racked up. And unlike Tony, Dozell likes to stay in pretty much the whole game. He just gets fired up, and he's a competitor. I think it has to do with that great offensive line. He never gets touched. KC hung tough, but to fill y'all out in the fourth quarter with a twisted ankle, Joe Davis filled in nicely, but again, it was just too much Dallas, T-Cos.
Yeah, and think about this. 8 rushing touchdowns in this game. What is going on here? I mean, Dozell limited to just 3 touchdowns, and Dallas still put up the big points. Jermaine Jones did a great job on Dallas there. He had 2 interceptions defensively. And that's the thing about Dallas. They got into a little bit of a dogfight here in this game, and I think a lot of people thought they might run away with it. But this also shows that KC is very competitive this year. But Dallas, on the other end, they play defense when they have to. Big win for them, and I think they're going to keep this thing going at 3-0.
Oh, absolutely. I can already see the collision course of Dallas and Georgia in the final game there heading to Arena Bowl, and I think one of those teams is going to take home the title. All right, moving on. Arizona Rattlers take a trip to Colorado, and again, the thin air proved a little too much for Bonner and company. Although I have to tell you, T-Cos, Bonner and Gatewood, these guys are just timeless. They continue to do it. They both had fabulous games if you look at the stats, but on the scoreboard, they came up short, 54-56. And Colorado, again, T-Cos, you mentioned last week, you don't think they were using too much of Harrell, but actually looking at some injury reports, Harrell has some quadricep tears that he's working through, but apparently playing in pain does not limit him too much, as he came out with some clutch catches that proved to be the difference for Colorado.
Yeah, like I said, Damian Harrell really needed to get involved more, and he did. He had 4 touchdowns, and yeah, news comes out that he's been playing hurt, so you really got to give it up to him, because right now they do not have the same receiving core that they had last year. Arizona, on the other hand, Colorado's a tough place to play, but this was another winnable game for them. Every game that they've had, they really were in the thick of things. Came out winless the last 3. Now they've got to get ready to play Las Vegas, and I think that's a big game too, because they are a better team on paper than Las Vegas. They're going to have that game at home, and they've got to get off the schneid next week in that game.
I agree, T-Cos, and especially with Arizona. I mean, you look at Bonner and Gatewood. The whole team pretty much is playing very well. They're just coming up with a few mental errors and just coming up a little short, and that's got to be frustrating. So they're definitely looking to improve at home against Las Vegas. All right, moving on. Georgia Force take a trip to Tampa Bay, and this is a game, again, that Markham did not want to lose. And again, he finds himself, as we talked about earlier, at 0-3. Georgia 61, Tampa Bay 47. And again, T-Cos, we're talking about Chris Greason, 7 TDs. And look at the receiving trio he has. He has Bergeron, he has Chris Jackson, he's got Lee. I mean, 3 #1 guys, and Georgia is stacked. And again, their scores and their record is showing it. Tampa Bay, on the other hand, did have 5 rushing TDs. And that Feeler, their fullback, looked fantastic. But again, it was not enough. As again, I don't know if Tampa Bay or Tim is going to be a victim of all his legendary kicking changes. Maybe that roulette wheel might come to the coaching staff. Because again, Markham's not looking good at 0-3, T-Cos.
And I think the thing to focus on here is that Georgia is just a much better team than Tampa Bay. Georgia right now is playing like they did 2 years ago when they made it to the Arena Bowl. And not only that, like you said, they've got 3 #1 real receivers, and Greason did an excellent job of spreading the ball around. Isn't just keen on one of them, and that's making it really hard for defenses, and I think it's going to continue to make it hard for defenses. And the Georgia Force are a team to be reckoned with this year.
Oh, absolutely, T-Cos. And I remember when Georgia was at the Arena Bowl 2 years ago, right at that game, I thought for sure they were going to be crowned the champions. Chris Jackson with a patented one-handed grab, but if it wasn't for that field goal by Clay Rush, things would have been different for the Georgia franchise. But again, I think 2007 is going to be their year.